David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. This is one of my favorite annual reviews, where I get to take a closer look at the Graf von Faber-Castell Pen of the Year. Over the last several years, Faber-Castell has been very kind enough to lend me one of their pens of the year. Now, you might notice that this is the 2023 model, and it is now 2024 when I am posting this. Typically, I have been able to get my hands on one of these pens shortly after they launch, but this year's pen has been very popular, and Faber-Castell has had challenges actually keeping them in stock. They literally didn't have a spare pen to loan me for several months. A great deal of thought and preparation goes into this annual limited edition release, and it shows in the end result. You might recall previous versions of the Pen of the Year, such as the Sparta, there was the Knights, as well as the Aztecs. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Pen of the Year series, and this year's theme pays tribute to ancient Egypt. It's a pen inspired by the culture, symbolism, and traditions of ancient Egypt. What I am going to do today is go over the parts and features of this uniquely themed pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements and some size comparisons. A big thanks go out to Graf von Faber-Castell for providing this pen on loan for review. The pen arrives in some rather substantial packaging. If you would care to see a full unboxing, you can check that out here. There was something about this year's packaging which disappointed me a bit. In previous years, the large box included an additional tray so that you could use it to store multiple pens, or maybe your entire Graf von Faber-Castell Pens of the Year collection if you have one. But for some reason this year they omitted that feature, and the case will only fit a single pen. It was a little funny. If you watch the video in the unboxing, I had the compliment about the box about halfway out of my mouth as I was showing it. I was a bit bewildered as I was trying to figure out where the extra slots went. But other than that one issue, the packaging and presentation of this pen are top-notch, which is what you would expect given the price point. There is a very nice pamphlet explaining a lot of what went into the creation of this pen. On the front here is what I believe is Horus, who was a protector god of the Egyptians. Also, the writing on the side here, it says Ancient Egypt, and it also says Ancient Egypt in Arabic. Now, when we're talking about ancient Egypt, we're talking about a period of around 3000 BC until around 400 AD. And the pen I'm going to show you today has a great deal of symbolism regarding that period of time. First of all, this is what the pen looks like. It comes in this little pouch, and then here is the pen. First of all, this pen is metal with a matte DLC coating. DLC stands for diamond-like carbon. It has a bit of a matte finish, but I would categorize it as a very light and smooth matte as opposed to a heavier matte with a more granular texture. The pen is black, which is appropriate. The ancient Egyptians called their home Kemet, which meant black land. This is because it was often flooded by the dark silt of the Nile River, which also fertilized the soil. This annual cycle is said to have led to the creation of the calendar system, consisting roughly of 365 days. Okay, let's take a closer look at the parts and features of this unique offering. First of all, on the top of the cap, there is a scarab engraved in an inlaid piece of blue lapis lazuli. The beetle was sacred in ancient Egypt and was seen as a lucky symbol on things like amulets, seals, and coffins. You see, when the Nile would begin to flood, the beetles would move away from the water and represent an early signal to the people of the soon-to-occur flood. The deep blue of this lapis lazuli was a new color back then and became associated with water. Now, at first I thought this material had some sparkle to it, but when you look at it up close here, like through a microscope, you can see that the silver lacquer was applied on top of this material. Nothing wrong with that, it's just thought it was an interesting treatment. Okay, next up we have the cap. This flared design is modeled after the crown worn by Queen Nefertiti. Now, the tomb of Nefertiti is yet to be found, but one of the most iconic ancient Egyptian artifacts is a bust of Nefertiti, which was found back in 1912. The tall crown shape was rare for the times and was a symbol of Nefertiti's position of power, which was said to be equal to, if not greater, than her husband, who was the pharaoh Akhenaten. I also find this flared cap appropriate for a Graf von Faber-Castell pen because that design element has been used in several other pens of theirs. The Anello Rose Gold was the first one that came to mind. Then we have the traditional Graf von Faber-Castell clip. It is hinged and operates nicely in materials of varying thicknesses. At the end of the cap, it is engraved with the name of the company on one side and handmade in Germany on the other. All of the engraving on this pen looks very crisp and very clean. I think that the process of engraving and then applying that DLC coating really helps the engraving look really precise and neat. There is a medium-sized step down from the cap to the barrel, and then we have a lot going on here on the barrel. It is adorned with ornate hieroglyphics. The hieroglyphics are the symbols of 12 ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses. Hieroglyphs are considered to be the oldest form of Egyptian writing. There are around 7,000 which we know the meaning for, thanks to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which archaeologists were able to use in order to translate the symbols. The barrel is straight, and then at the end it is engraved with Pen of the Year 2023, as well as the number 2023 written in hieroglyphics. There is a small step down to the blind cap, which is adorned with blue lotus petals. The blue lotus was one of the most sacred and revered plants in ancient Egypt. It was used for things like medicine and rituals and celebration and even magic. It was also used as a powerful psychedelic drug. And then at the very end, there is the Eye of Horus engraved in 24-karat gold-plated metal. In ancient Egypt, gold was a symbol of power and wealth, and only the pharaohs were allowed to adorn themselves with it. Now, I mentioned this was a blind cap. This pen is a piston filler. In order to access the piston, you remove the blind cap. Now, there might be a practical purpose for having this blind cap, but I'm wondering why they just didn't make the whole back portion a piston knob. But the element of a blind cap like this has been a consistent element in these Pen of the Year models. This piston knob has some very slight grooves near the back of it, but doesn't contain any symbolic elements. It might have been nice to put something on here as a bit of a hidden surprise. Maybe a reference to the tomb of Tutankhamun, which was hidden for so many years. The cap twists off with one full rotation, and underneath we have two real highlights of this pen. First of all, we have the nib. It's 18-karat gold and very nicely stamped with the company name, their crest, as well as Pen of the Year. And here's a look at the plastic feed. I am really loving this colorful section. The contrast of this gold against the blue, against the stark black of the rest of the pen is really nice. The colors really pop. It's inspired by the mask of Tutankhamun, which you can see here has alternating stripes of gold and lapis lazuli. Here on the section, it begins with a small flare and then has alternating rings of 24-karat gold-plated metal and rings painted in that lapis lazuli blue. I find it interesting, and you can see it here, the plated gold has a bit of a matte texture to it, but then the blue rings are smooth. This provides an interesting but subtle tactile element to the section, which actually helps improve your grip without transitions being a disruptive element. I like it. Then at the back of the section, we have a small ink window. I thought this was interesting because in all of the photos of the pen that are included in the manual and online, that ink window is missing. It was an additional blue stripe. I just thought it was interesting that a design element of the pen was changed at a very late date after all of the promotional pictures were taken. This pen is rather hefty. It feels very substantive in the hand, but it's usable. It's not overly heavy. The cap kind of posts. While I think aesthetically it looks nice, it's not very secure. Plus, the heavy cap really backweights the pen, so I would recommend using this pen unposted. As you probably deduced when I discussed the piston knob earlier, this is a piston filler. The piston mechanism is smooth. I've always been fond of pistons with a ratcheting system like that. You can hear it. I just think that sound is neat. This is a limited edition pen. I couldn't locate a number physically on the pen, but there will be 375 fountain pens and 125 roller balls. As I mentioned up top, apparently these have been very popular and selling well. You can find them at a large number of retailers, and this pen sells for $6,500. This is obviously a luxury pen, and it is priced as such. And that is actually in line with the previous Pen of the Year offerings as well. As with each of the Pen of the Years I have tested, the Ancient Egypt is very well made. It feels very solid in the hand, and the attention to detail is extremely high, which is what you would expect from this annual offering. If you are in the market for a pen in this price range and you enjoy the art and symbolism and culture of Ancient Egypt, then this would be a perfect pen for you. Now, I won't be doing a writing sample in this review. When it comes to very high-end pens on loan, there are some times when inking or even dipping them is not an option. In the case of this specific pen, it's because this pen will be sold and they want to be able to sell it as new and unused. In reviews like these, while I would love to be able to write with it, I feel that the opportunity to get an in-depth look at a pen like this, which will not have that many reviews available on it, outweighs the lack of a writing sample, and I hope you understand. I have written with the nib dry, and it was very smooth and very soft. Graf von Faber-Castell has some outstanding nibs. Okay, now it is time for some measurements and some size comparisons. First off, wanted to share with you that also included with the pen is a bottle of the lapis lazuli ink. I think this bottle looks really nice, and this is what the ink looks like. It's kind of a royal blue. In regard to some other royal blues, this is what it looks like with J. Herbin Louis XIV. Here's Mont Blanc's royal blue. There's S.D. Dupont's royal blue, which is a bit on the light side. Faber-Castell's royal blue. Then there's Pelican 4001 royal blue and Quebeco royal blue, which I think I like the saturation on that one of the group. I kind of like that Quebeco the best out of this group, but I do like this lapis lazuli. I think that's a solid ink to include with this. And here's what the pen looks like again. I think that scarab on the back looks nice for a pop of color. Here are the hieroglyphics. I can't remember if I mentioned it in the review, but these are of 12 different gods and goddesses from ancient Egypt. That's what all of their symbols are. And then once we take this off, I really like this pop of color that this gold and blue provides. And I think having the gold nib on there was appropriate for this particular pen. So in regard to some size comparisons, this is what it looks like with a Classic Pens LB5. And then here it is with a Pilot Custom Urushi. And then here it is with that Anello Rose Gold, which has that flared top, which I thought was appropriate for Faber-Castell. And then in regard to a couple of other Faber-Castell pens, this is it with a Barnado, and then this is an E-Motion. And finally, we have a pen from Faber-Castell, which I think is really underrated, which is the Loom, which is one of my favorite Faber-Castell pens. The nib on these pens is outstanding. So there you have the Ancient Egypt. I think that this is a real solid offering, and that I think if you are into ancient Egyptian culture, then this pen would really speak to you. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.